Basic Project Management course, Module 5. Let's start by looking at the project plan. The project plan is probably the single most useful and informative document that you will have over the life cycle of your project, and it forms the basis of an overall blueprint of how you're going to deliver the project's objectives and to deliver the agreed and required business benefits by a series of deliverables that are derived from a set of tasks which will have both duration and timescales, as well as noted resource assigned to them. The project plan should essentially answer the questions of what is being done, when is it being done, who's doing it, and what are the various tasks and dependencies. It should also point out the key project milestones along the project's life cycle that form the project's critical path. And this critical path is the activities that must be completed if it is to deliver its business objectives and therefore deliver its business benefits. Project plans can be set up in a variety of different ways, using a number of different tools, depending on the nature of the project, the customer demand, or personal preference. Such tools could include Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, Mind Manager, or MS Project, for example. Take your time to develop your project plan over the life cycle of the project and use the expertise and the experience from others within the team. It's often the case that the better the plan, the better the project. But every project plan, regardless of which tool you may choose to use, should essentially contain the following. Firstly, the tasks. Tasks are essentially a list of all those tasks and tools necessary to undertake the delivery of the project. The project plan should also include the dependencies, the dependent tasks that a task needs to have in place before that task can be started. A project plan should also include milestones. These are the key dates that a task or piece of work needs to complete by, and that which forms the critical path. Timescales is very essential to include both the duration, the total duration of the task or the piece of work, together with its start and end dates. Resource, the named individuals, teams or stakeholders who are responsible for a given task or set of tasks or work packages. And it's always helpful to include any relevant notes related to each activity. Please note that the project plan is an active document throughout the life cycle of the project, and it should incorporate any changes to the project that will affect its timescale, cost, quality, or resources. So a project without a plan is basically like a meal without a recipe, and it's often doomed to failure without one. So the key questions that often get asked is, how do I determine what should be in my project plan? And how do I go about setting it up? Well, besides firstly determining what type of document you should use for your project plan, even though a PMO often uses and recommends the use of something like Excel templates, the next steps of project planning should follow as listed below. To set up a project planning meeting with your project delivery team is very important, and depending upon time and availability, you may need to set up a number of such meetings. Brainstorming the key tasks and activities that you'll need to be achieved and the milestones you will need for each is really important. Using sticky notes on a wall or a table using such things as work breakdown structures is a great way of doing this. Work out the key resources you will need to deliver those tasks and activities and the duration and timelines required to deliver them within the constraints of the project's timeframe for delivery. The use of both dependency tables and network activity charts, for example, is very helpful at this stage. Work out any dependencies or predecessors, as our American friends like to call them, that the tasks and activities may have on each other. Build your plan into a coherent, understandable document with tasks, activities, and milestones fitted under the respective project lifecycle stages, and review with your project delivery team. A number of iterations of this may be required. Finally, and most importantly, seek help, support, and advice from your PMO should you have one and should you need it. Copies of the project plan template I will make available at the end of this course. Now let's turn our attention to the critical path. Essentially, the critical path of a project plan are the things, the tasks, the milestones that must be completed in order to achieve the project's deliverables, and therefore realize the project's objectives. In practice, if a critical path task is delayed, it will delay the finish of the project, unless remedial action is taken or project contingency built in. Critical path analysis is a technique that enables the duration of work to be calculated. The main component is a logical diagram that shows the interrelationships between all the activities. Durations can then be applied to each and an overall duration calculated by working out the earliest time at which each activity can start and end. Any activity that has the same earlier start and later start and finish dates is referred to as critical. The other activities have a certain amount of leeway or float. Let's have a go at another exercise. Exercise 3, the project plan. Using the project example you previously used in exercise 1, try to design a simple project plan to deliver the project's deliverables and objectives to achieve the project's benefits. Take 15 or 20 minutes to do this and resume the video when finished. Let's turn our attention to the risks and issues register. It is recommended that we use a combined register of both issues and risks that have been captured as part of your regular project checkpoint meetings. First things first. For clarity, I need to explain the difference between a risk and an issue using PRINCE2 definitions. A risk is an uncertain event or set of events that, should it occur, will have an effect on the achievement of the objectives. A risk is measured by the combination of the probability of a perceived threat or opportunity occurring and the magnitude of its impact on objectives, whilst an issue is a relevant event that has happened. It was not planned and it requires some sort of management action. It can be any concern, query and request for change, a suggestion or off-specification raised during a project. Project issues can be about anything to do with the project. The risks and issues register should be discussed as part of the project's regular checkpoint calls, at which each risk and issue is discussed, agreed and completed with the help of the team's input. Some of the information requested by the register is subjective. It depends on the individual's point of view. And as such, all discussion and agreement should be based as an overall understanding or picture of the nature of the respective risk or issue in relation to the project's objectives and business benefits being sought against the project's brief and business case. Try and use color coding, for example, to identify if a risk or issue is created, open, mitigated, transferred, or possibly closed. When making decisions about risks or issues, try and think about what the risk or issue's impact will be on the project's objectives and deliverables based on what the business benefits are being sought. This will help to focus thoughts based on tangible deliverables and the degree of effort needed to mitigate the risk or issue. Dealing with risks and issues is a day-to-day activity for any project manager. It is suggested that you work with your risks and issues register on a daily basis to ensure good management of the tracking and monitoring of these crucial events to ensure a smooth operation of your project. Ensure that the owner of the risk or issue is available on the checkpoint call on which it is being discussed. Never assign a risk or issue without the explicit acceptance of the risk or issue by the proposed owner of it. So let's have a look at this combined register and what it incorporates. Firstly, have their risk or issue number. All risks and issues should have a unique reference number for ease of identification. Indicate whether it is a risk or an issue. Remember, a risk is something that could happen, and if it does happen, we're going to base it on likelihood and impact in order to determine what mitigation we need to take. An issue is something that has happened, and often it's a case that issues come out of risks. What was the date that the risk or issue was raised? And what's the title of the risk or issue? Give a brief description of the risk or issue. What work stream does it belong to? What work package will be doing the work relating to mitigation of the risk or issue? Put a brag status on your risk and issue register. In other words, is it blue, which means complete? Is it red, high alert, something that needs attention right away? Is it amber? Amber is kind of in the middle. It could go either red or green. And green, of course, is its low risk, not as important as something that's in the higher category. This will show the current risk or issue status. Use the priority to indicate the general priority status of the risk or issue. Is it high, medium, or low? Who's going to own the risk or issue? It has the owner of the risk or issue accepted the ownership of it. The mitigation is about how the risk or issue is going to be mitigated, resolved, or dealt with. Provide a full and comprehensive strategy or action plan of managing the risk or issue, and update as appropriate as more information and clarity is being received. Remember to include the date on which the risk or issue is closed. And the response is, how do you propose to handle the risk or issue? Next, what's your confidence in the agreed mitigation or action plan that will work to deal with the risk or issue? This is usually based upon a percentage or other criteria of confidence. Likelihood and impact are vital. What's the likelihood that this risk or issue will happen and have an impact on your project? What's the impact? If the risk or issue has happened or will happen, what will the likely impact be on your project plan? And then, what will be its impact? Usually it's based against a set of criteria of some sort. Finally, the status update. Is the risk or issue open or closed? A good way to manage risks and issues is as per the slide on screen now. You put it in a 4x4 matrix. So on the left-hand side, on the horizontal, you have the impact. Is the impact low or high? Equally, on the left-hand side, on the vertical line, you have likelihood. Is it low or is it high? Record your risks and issues in each box accordingly. That way, you'll be able to determine which risks and issues need the greatest focus and attention and which are not as important. It's a great way of managing risks and issues. So let's have a little example by doing an exercise on risk. Offer a real-world example of something that you've been involved with that had some risks associated with it, and think about some of the ways in which you could mitigate those risks. Firstly, state the situation, then name the risks that come to mind, and finally, mitigate the risks noted. Take 10 or 15 minutes on the exercise, and maybe use a 4x4 matrix to determine which are your highest priority risks and issues and which are your lowest risks and issues priorities. Resume the video when complete. Finally, on this module, let's look at a fifth exercise. Let's look at the risks and issues register. Using the project example you previously used in exercise 1, why not design a simple risks and issues register? Take 15 or 20 minutes and perform this exercise in pairs or teams, and then return in module 6 when we will resume the Effective Basic Project Management course.